How you doing?
I'm great.
Good.
How are you?
Less good this morning. I was sort of plotting my escape to Canada now that David Sachs is in charge, but...
So, I got a question for you.
Oh, ha-ha. Oh, no one's ever done that before. Anyway. Yes.
So, you've been called a lot of things, but my favorite description is one you called yourself.
Yeah.
Tech irritant.
Yes, that's on my form. Well, I'm still on Twitter, but I don't use it. But,
right.
Yeah.
You had a few bones to pick with several technologists just in the last 24 hours.
I have.
David Sachs, Elon Musk,
Yeah.
Ben Horowitz.
Yeah.
Explain to me what your issue is.
Well, there was a couple things. One was the installation of JD Vance as their butler in the U.S. government. They've been pushing him up for years. He's quite inexperienced, but nonetheless, he's now, one second away from power, essentially, if Trump wins. And so I was somewhat, I kept saying this was happening with these people for years and years. Mm-hmm. And everyone was like, oh, they're not interested in politics, they're not interested in this. But they are. They're very much interested in power and control of the government. And they have disdain for the government. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say hatred, just disdain, utter disdain, and they want to burn it down. And so, it's been something Peter Thiel has talked about, Mark Andreessen, all of them over the years. And this is instead of, doing it in a violent way, they've done it using their money and power,
right,
and the means they have to do so. And now they've managed to even upend Rupert Murdoch, who wanted a different vice presidential candidate. I'm not naive and don't think that rich people don't control, levers of power over the many, many decades or centuries our country's been in power. But this is sort of an explicit grab for power that has worked really nicely for them.
Sure. JD Vance.
Yeah.
Tell me your concerns about him as a candidate.
Oh, so many and vast. Well, he hates women, but let's put that aside. I'm not joking about it. Go pay attention to what he's saying and the things he said about, rape and beating of women and stuff like that, and about no abortions whatsoever anywhere.
Not so great on LGBTQ.
Doesn't like the gays. That's why I'm a woman gay, so that's not good for me. But, he took time out of his busy senatorial thing to attack me when I was interviewing John Fetterman.
Right.
It was so bizarre and strange to have a U.S. senator attack you and tell you didn't believe in the future. I have 4 kids. He only has 2, I think. So I believe in the future twice as much as he does. And so it was weird. He's weird and petty and small-minded, and he's created a persona around himself. That he came from Appalachia. In fact, he grew up in Middletown, which is a suburb of Dayton.
Sure.
My grandparents came from rural West Virginia, and I don't sit here and talk with an accent and say I'm an Appalachian girl. I'm not. I grew up in a really nice place. He had parents he had a mother who had a drug problem. That's absolutely true. I think he put a lot of tropes around people of that. I have a lot of relatives there. They're not constitutionally unable to be good people. He sort of created this broken people image, which I thought was, there's so many good books about the problems of people in that area. But he's a good writer, and he's a bit of a fabulist, I think.
But let me ask you.
So from a thing,
sure.
I met him when he was in tech. He was there very briefly. He worked for Mithril. He worked for a biotech thing. He worked for Steve Case for a very short time.
Sure.
Very disliking of Trump. That's already been seen. Very different, and shifted on a dime. I find that, I don't know.
Unsettling.
He suddenly loves Trump. He called Trump American Hitler, which I don't call Trump American Hitler. It's just, that's like a real far thing to say. And so you may think that. I don't think that, but the Nazi regime was my minor in college. So I think you have to really understand what you're saying when you say something like that, and he obviously didn't. So the shift is unusual. The lack of experience, his America First kind of attitude, if you go back to America First, not wanting to engage in the world.
So we just had...
And he's a creature of Elon, Peter, and to a lesser extent David Sachs, who's kind of their minion. They're very brilliant. I would say Elon and Peter are brilliant. David is not so much.
Yeah.
So.
We just had a session earlier this week about U.S.-China policy, and it seemed like we were heading toward a Cold War or even a hot one.
Absolutely.
So look, you're concerned about not just JD, but all these folks chasing power, changing the direction of the country. What do we do about it?
I'm not worried about, look, people, the country changes direction all the time. It's
course.
just they're totally unable to understand the issues. Like, just the idea that they know what they're talking about is really quite disturbing. They have no expertise, and yet they continue to say things like out of their mouths, which is really amazing. I mean, at one point, you know, it can be from the very silly. At one point, Elon was lecturing women about cesareans, which I know he has a lot of kids, but I had a cesarean, and I don't really welcome information from him about cesarean. He was saying people with cesareans have bigger heads because they come out better and they're smarter. Something strange. And I was like, sit down, fella. You know, like I had one. Both my kid who was not cesarean is in fact smarter. But okay, fine. That's whatever. It was kind of ridiculous. And so I think I'm worried about influence of China. I'm very worried about the influence of China, of Russia, and their business interests there. I think it's really problematic when a very small group of incredibly wealthy people control the access to the levers of power and have really bad and disturbing and toxic information about everything from how we should interact with China or Ukraine or trans people. You know, and the same thing with Andreessen Horowitz, who just decided to back Trump. Not a surprise to me. I've spent a lot of time with Mark Andreessen over the years, and to say he has any political leanings, he believes in himself.
Yeah.
He loves himself and money, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Ben is the same way, and you know, they don't care about the other parts of the platforms. And to me, if you're a more rounded person, you know, Ben himself has a trans child. Elon has a trans child. Like, and the hateful things. Ben does not say hateful things publicly. But Elon certainly does, and so you have to wonder about that.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I am going to
self-righteous. It's just weird and
I am going to
twisted.
come to the audience for questions, so please prepare them. But what I want to know is, I want to turn this to action. What is to be done? If you're not liking where things are going, the votes are there.
I don't know what to
done?
say. Their plan is working. You know, I feel like I'm in the middle of a James Bond plot where the villain actually wins, but. You know, there's all this disarray in the Democratic Party, and it's a joke, Dems in disarray. Everything was going well, but things happen, and obviously they have a candidate who is they've been a very effective president in many ways, and at the same time has age problems. I get attacked a lot for saying that, but the man is old. So is Trump, by the way. Scott and I on Pivot always talk about, you know, we have age gating of young people to social media. We also believe in age gating for elderly people in positions of power, Supreme Court, federal judges. All kinds of companies do that. Companies have board age, you know, age limits. Police, firemen, everybody has an age limit except for Supreme Court justices who are appointed for life, which is an astonishing thing. Yeah. I don't want it for Democratic leaning or Republican leaning. I think when you get past a certain age, you should retire. Yeah. Even if you're able, you know, 75 has been talked about, and so there's a real problem with people. I think today 2/3 of Democrats want Biden to step down. At the same time, he's saying he was chosen by 14 million people in primary states. That is absolutely true. Sure. So it's a real problem because there's arguments to be made on both sides. It's a healthy argument, I think, within the Democratic Party, though it's getting a little ugly now. Yeah. If you even indicate that you're for one side or the other side, there's sort of it's not a civil war, but a real argument going on.
Now, look, you're a huge politics fan, obviously. You know the history. You've also been covering technology for your career. When you wrote your book, which is partially a memoir, it is. Did it give you, in the act of writing, did it give you any perspective over these forces of power fighting each other?
Yes, I mean,
I
think it's so interesting what's happening today politically is, and I do live in Washington now, which is an important viewpoint to have.
I gathered.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, no, well, I also interview lots of tech people and media people and Hollywood people, and I travel extensively. But I think that what I was writing in the book was the first line of the book, which was, so it was capitalism after all. Yeah. Everything they do has to do with their business self-interest. which again, I've started lots of businesses. I don't have a problem with capitalism. What I think it is that they cosplay being heroes and saving the world, and I'd rather they act like investment bankers who we all know why they're there, which is to make money. And so the whole point of my book was, don't be fooled. They're not here to save you. They're not here to do anything but do what a pharmaceutical executive is doing. Mm-hmm. And so this was the journey of these people who sort of pretended they were Star Trek and were in fact literally just money makers is all they are. And that's what I was trying to write about, is that this is, and that we have given them no restrictions, ability to make untold amounts of money off of the federal. The government paid for the internet, who benefited from it, a very small group of people. Same thing with AI. They will do whatever it takes to have power and create mini-states. And I think any power unchecked is dangerous. And so that's what I wanted to point out, was the shift of these people from, we're here to save the world, which they weren't, to, we think we'd like to own the world and tell everybody what to do.
Sure.
Which is the point we're at right now.
The pursuit of power. All right, let's go to the audience for questions, opinions, contradictions. Anyone? Anyone? Yes, back here. Thank you. Your name and affiliation, please.
Lisa O'Connor with Accenture.
Hi.
And I read your book, amazing, huge fan.
Thank you.
There was one thing in the book that really struck me, and you said you were brokenhearted.
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, the second part of the book is a tech love story. You know, it is. I believe in the incredible effects of technology on healthcare, on climate change tech, on all these things. Like, tech could really be a uniter. I was a Star Trek person. There's an interview I did with Steve Jobs where he and I talked about this. He goes, I want Star Trek, which is, it's a fictional thing, but it's the idea of a technology for the good of humanity. And it has so many good things. And I think it just became a profit-making, screw people, take their shit, shoplift their content. I mean, there was just a really good thing by Julia Angwin has a great group that they're working on stuff where they were showing they're just scraping everybody's content in AI. They're just taking it. Which is what they did before. And so, you know, I was heartbroken because there was so many possibilities, and I, in part, believed some of them, right? A great deal of them. And of the promise of it. And so I think the heartbreaking part is there still is that, right? That there still is a possibility that we all share. But what's happened is the wealth has become concentrated. The inequity has become so pronounced now, and it's creating divisions that are unnecessary. They're unnecessary. And so, you know, very typical, there are attacks on DEI. Fine, it went a little too far, big fucking deal. Like, so what? Like, the intent of it is a good one. Diversity, equity, inclusion. The opposite of diversity, equity, inclusion, if you just think about it, is homogeneity, unfairness, exclusion. What a world. What a great world that is. Give me a fucking break. It's meant to be so that we create a better playing field. If you listen to them long enough, like right now, this heinous attack on former President Trump, they're blaming DEI because there was a woman's Secret Service. That is not what happened here, right? There's a lot of things, and they'll do an investigation. But this is typical. It was DEI that had caused the Alaska Airlines thing. It's just sick. It's like crazy to be doing that. It was an accident. It was a failure in the company that was running Alaska Airlines, right? That's what it was, Lockheed. It was, anyway, I just get exhausted by the blame, the victimization. When the world's richest people act like victims, it's really an astonishing thing to see, you know? And part of me, given I do have 4 kids, I sometimes think of it in a kind way, which is, I'm so sorry you didn't get hugged enough as children, but you're 52 now. So you're gonna have to seek therapy and stop taking out your childhood trauma on us, because that's what's happening. And it's so unfortunate because there's so much wealth and amazing entrepreneurship that could happen across our country. I really believe in entrepreneurship. And you know, there's a scene in the book where someone is like, I'm saying you've got to do something about inequality. The wealth gap is getting so pronounced by the numbers. And I said, because you're either going to have to fix it or armor plate your Tesla, right? Because that's where it's going. And I was looking at this person and I thought, oh, he wants to armor plate his Tesla. That's what he would like. actually. The inequality does not bother these people, the lack of empathy. And you see it everywhere, whether it's around women, trans people, marginalized people. They could give a fuck. They really could. I'm sorry. They don't, and by the way, they don't have to. They want to be unpleasant, cruel people. Fine. That's great. But I don't want them to impose it on the rest of us, which is what they're planning, just so you're aware. That's what's going to happen. So,
all right. We've got a whole lot of questions, so let's see if we can burn through them quickly. Way in the back over there. Yes, please.
Hi, Alex Gross with Easy Press. I just want to say your approach to just speaking to power is pretty...
I'll be dead soon, so go ahead.
And actually, that's kind of part of my question here, is like, to maintain that posture in today's world, I think it's really hard for business owners, just business in general, to be that authentic, I guess, or transparent about what they think.
Yeah.
Are you talking about how you actually go about living your life and what you, I guess, maybe would hope to inspire in other people with how you're currently living?
Well, I've always not. I've always been like this. I've always not given a fuck. Like, right? You know, I mean, it's not that I don't give a fuck, because that's like I don't care. That's not true. I care a great deal. That's a very different thing. I don't not. Having 4 children must say to you that I care about the future, that I care about things, that I really believe in democracy. I really believe in a lot of things. And so when people tell me nonsensical things, I just cannot stop saying it. And that includes on the left, by the way. These ridiculous, not being able to question Biden's age, stop it. Stop it! Like, I get it, it's a problem. We have a problem here, but pretend we don't have one is kind of ridiculous, right? I don't know what to do, by the way, but it's at the same time. So I think I'm just like that. I spend a lot of time, I have an inability when someone says something stupid not to say, oh, that's really stupid. Like, I just don't know what happened. I think it's a good thing. I was, you know, it is a little, one of the things I did on the back of the book, which I really enjoyed, it was for myself, is instead of doing blurbs, I don't like asking people, rich people, for favors or famous people. So on the back of my book, I got all the insults of all these jackasses, and I put them on the back of David Sachs is on there. I'm the most vitriolic, I'm surprised he knew the word, vitriolic voice in the tech ecosystem. Elon called me an asshole. I put them all on the back, and I called it Praise for Kara Swisher. And there's 2 more pages inside. So I don't know. I listen, I try to also be fair if they do something great. I'm often praising Elon around, you know, the strides he made with electric cars, or the stuff that's going on in space, although I worry about private ownership of space.
Yeah, we had a session on that earlier.
Yeah, it's worrisome. I see the cost. I understand why, and they can be more innovative. That's absolutely true. So I don't know. Let's
see if we can go to the next question.
I would probably end up in a bad
Everybody's
place.
really
Sure. I'm happy to answer all the questions.
My name's Jessica Matthews. I'm a reporter at Fortune.
Hi.
I wanted to ask, are there any venture capitalists or tech people who you think will come out and support Donald Trump in the coming weeks that have not yet?
I think they're like sheeple. I call them sheeple. I did a famous article where I called them sheeple, essentially, when they all went to Trump Tower, all the tech leaders. That's how the book opens. I'm not sure. I think all the little ones will. There's a whole pack of them. They're like a little gang that I'm not even slightly scared of. You know, if you say boo to them, they'd run. They do a lot of manliness, but they're not very manly in that regard, in the traditional sense. Yeah, I think some of them will feel compelled to either say nothing or join it, essentially, this group, because they're worrying about funding, they're worried about stuff. So you'll see I think there'll be a lot of Nikki Haley's, I'll say. There'll be a lot of Nikki Haley's, which is, it's so embarrassing. She has ostentatious ambition, and so she has to go and bend the knee to Trump, which she did. It was such an embarrassment last night for her, but her ambition is so vast that she had to do it. Or she felt she had. She didn't have to do it. She did. But I think you'll see a lot of Nikki Haley's who don't like Trump but will do it in order to not be out of the ecosystem. Others, you know, they're relentlessly attacking Reid Hoffman right now, who I really do admire. I think he's tried to get along with them, but now, and I told them, don't, they'll come at you, Reid. He was like, no, they're my friends. I'm like, they will fuck you if they can, if they need to, and they're doing it right now. You know, Reid I think will stick firm. Some others, like Reed Hastings, will probably stay firm. But, you know, it's hard. I think it's really hard in that ecosystem not to be a sheep. not to be a Nikki Haley.
And there's clearly a great division opening up.
There's a division.
Let's go to this one right up here.
Hey, Kara. Healy from Boom Pop Small Startup from Noe Valley. So we always hear growing up that a loud minority can lead to massive social change. And I think you see that. But I feel like it's morphed now to this universe of extremes. You have this bipartisan universe where we're just screaming at each other, and there's not really a role for like productive discourse. And I kind of feel like the majority of folks are in the middle, just like, hey, we just want to like...
Hello. Yes.
Yeah, like read books and think and not be idiots. And so the kind of question is, one, who's talking for the middle? Who's like, what's the role of media in that, and where do we talk? Where do we have discourse?
Well, it's interesting because no matter what you do, the attacks are relentless. I've just gotten off of social media largely. I just watch really pleasant videos on Threads now, you know, like cooking videos. But largely, I've sort of shut down comments everywhere because it's deleterious, and I'm pretty tough, and I don't like it. I think I have this theory that there's a quiet middle. You know, remember the silent majority of the Nixon administration? That was absolutely true. There's all these people who are kind of like a little too much with the 1968 stuff, a little too much with the John Birch Society, and they sat and they didn't know what to do. And I do think there's a silent majority of people who are like, I just want to raise my kids. I just stop beating up on, you know, gay people. Let them get married. Like, they're just like that. They're like, what the fuck? It was interesting, right after the Trump shooting, they went to a lot of these Trump towns and were hoping to get sort of angry, like, you know, the Democrats are responsible for it. And a lot of the people, and I have a lot of relatives in these areas, were like, it's not Joe Biden's fault that he got shot. It's a sad young man. Like, they were so reasonable. And when you actually go out to these places, and I spend a lot of time in some of these places, much more reasonable, much less angry. But they, you know, there's a line in my book where it's like enragement equals engagement, right? And so getting people enraged, and then the media does tend to like focus on those people. I do think there's a lot more people who are just like, you know, it's not Joe Biden's fault that he got shot, or it's not, you know, whatever side you happen to be on, that are a lot more reasonable. But what I do think is that social media does gin people up. Bots do it. There's all these. I have a friend of mine who's a New York Times reporter that always responds to angry things, and I keep writing her. I'm like, it's a bot. Stop it. Stop arguing with a fucking bot. He's designed to make you upset. And so I think that's difficult. And I do hope, you see it in elections across the country where, like in Kansas, they voted for in the different states where they vote for reasonable things. A lot of the elections since 2022 have been rather reasonable, like constitutional amendments for, you know, and then you look at the polls, most people want, you know, decent abortion laws or gun control laws, and just the politicians, because they've got people like Elon Musk screaming in their ears and handing over $45 million. I mean, I've always thought politicians were cheap whores. I just didn't realize how cheap. And they really are.
And I will say, that's a great point to end on, which is just that the internet, what we read on the internet, social media, it's not real.
Well, it is real. No, that's not true. That's not true. It is real because it does inform these people. They're trying to get some level of influence, like a Bill Ackman, who suddenly is an expert on another person. I'm going to do a 96 section tweet on hedge fund investing because I know fucking nothing. And that's how I feel about him. Well, right? You know, and buy into his stupid new thing he's doing because, you know, there's one born every minute. You know, he just can't, he's not satisfied to be this rich. And, oh, another person wants to kill me. Great. That's great. Anyway.
Well, we will have to leave it there.
We'll see.
The great Kara Swisher, please. Thank you.